if you are a full-time YouTuber, like I am, for example, then you might know that you have 24 hours a day and 7 days a week time to craft. That is something I hear very, very often, even if I haven't found out yet where those creatures live, for whom that is possible. But I wanted to use the intro of this video as a chance to bring the tiniest piece of the truth to light, because the truth is, at least for me, today it's Monday. You know, for you it's probably another day because I don't publish videos on Monday. But for me, today is Monday, and since Friday, my desk looks exactly like it was looking during my live stream with Barbara at 49 Dragonflies. By the way, if you have missed that live stream, then please hop over to her channel later and watch the replay. You can find it there. And to all of you who have been there with us, thank you so, so much. That was such a wonderful evening, and we had so much fun together. And I can already tell you, little hint, or a spoiler, or what is that then? I don't know. We will definitely do that again in the future. We already have some plans for more live streams like that. And I wanted to thank you because that was just so amazing, and it was such a wonderful time. I'm really hoping that it was that for you as well, but you have left comments that it was like that for you as well. But for us, it was such a great playing time, and also time with our community, with you, that is just incredible, and that is so, so much appreciated by the both of us. I can't even bring that into words. That was so amazing. But the other side of this thing is that my desk still looks like it looked in the live stream, and I've just picked up my phone stand from over there where I had it since Friday. Why is my desk still looking like that? Well, that is easy, because I had a lot of administration work to do for my homepage, for my Instagram, to prepare the videos so that you can see them. You know, all of this stuff that you have to do around crafting if you are a full-time YouTuber. And I thought already on Friday, it is really important that we sometimes do what this little guy is doing here. I mean, as you can see, this is Tim Holtz's, is that correct? That is difficult, website. And here it says, do what you love. And you have probably heard about this whole discussion about him, and I think that brought a really big wave into our community, and I want to do what he said in my own life as well, even if I know that I can't do it as extremely as he is doing it at the moment, I guess. But I want to use this attitude as like a caption for 2025 for myself. So that means I want to sit down here, even if I have a ton of administration to do right behind me, because, you know, my office is right behind me. Here I'm sitting at my craft desk, and there's my office. So that means I want to leave that behind me for a moment. And of course, when I record this video and when I show you what I want to show you in this video today, that is work for me as well. But at the same time, it's fun creating something, yeah? And that is the thing. And why am I telling you that? Because I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Because I think that is so, so important also to, yeah, like reset our brain a little bit. Perhaps not completely. We don't want to forget techniques or so, yeah, or things we already know. But I would like to reset my brain a little bit with this, because then afterwards, once you have created something and you can be happy with that and so on, then afterwards you can go with more motivation into the work that needs to be done, like administration of social media and babysitting of all of the platforms, for example. So today I would like to show you an effect which I have called Glossy Rust. You can see this has a really extreme patina. It looks rusty-ish. I have used like patina colors like blue and so on, but you could do that with other colors, of course, as well. And the special thing is it is glossy, but it has at the same time this really matte and crazy texture. And I found this out during the live stream with Barbara. That was, I mean, on Friday. So perhaps if you have been there, you have already seen what I did there and what happened by coincidence, because this was totally not planned for Friday. I did something there and then suddenly I found this effect, and I'm really, really amazed by this. And I thought I will make a separate video, and that is this one obviously, where I show you how this is done and where I explain everything in detail. I also made some additional thoughts after the live, even if I couldn't try it out yet, yeah, but you know, I have made some thoughts so that this is perhaps even easier to do. And yeah, perhaps you want to grab some supplies and craft along with me and leave everything else behind you. Don't look at your computer. I mean, if you watch this video on your computer, then you might need to look at your computer, but don't look at the other tasks you might have to do, and just take a little break, craft something, and then later on go with fresh energy to the other work you have to do, okay? So I will turn the camera and then we are going to talk about glossy rust. Oh my goodness, this feels so weird. Here are pieces of paper which don't belong here. This I haven't cleaned since Friday. I mean, you know, what the heck? So yeah, and I can also feel that I have some embossing powder left here on my desk on the glass mat, but that is not the problem because we have a Swiffer, and then we can clean this quickly so that we can go on and create more of these. So don't be confused if you haven't seen these much in the live stream. This is what I already created for my German video, yeah? And to be 100% honest, this wasn't here, this black, during the live stream that came here during my German video, but it's the same message because, you know, I did that, then I edited the German video, and I haven't had time to sit here, clean this and play along without you, play around without you, just for my own fun, yeah? There was just no time. But what I want to do today is I want to make more of these with a specific color palette in mind, because I need these for my moth journal. Perhaps you have seen me creating parts of that during the last year. For this journal, I have used some printables from my shop, the Moth and Paper Flutter set, that is an ephemera pack, and also the ID Card Oddities printable. And as you can see, this is pretty matchy-matchy. I wanted it like this because I always have the problem that I want to make somehow a neutral and very matchy journal with a limited color palette, and then I end up adding colors. And I think this is the first journal where, at least until today, this plan with the neutrals and very limited color palette worked, but I can already see that it, well, perhaps will change a little bit, because I also found other color combinations from these little guys here which would fit in here. Because what this is here, where I made this glossy rust effect for the first time, is nothing else than another printable from my shop, which is called Weathered Numerical Patina. And it's a ton of these little labels with a ton of, yeah, well, printed patina. But with this effect, we can also add a texture and, yeah, let's say another layer of patina, which is not printed, but which you can feel, you know, which looks way more realistic. But this was my starting point for making these little things, but you can of course also make this effect on other pieces of paper, yeah, that doesn't have to be a printable. But this is called Weathered Numerical Patina. It's available in my shop, and you can see it's a ton of these things in different sizes and also in different colors. I made this again for you so that, in a special way for you, so that you can have an easier job while printing this. You can see here are these things in a very big scale on some of the pages. And then there are also pages where it's already smaller, so that you don't have to run to your printer every single time you need a different size. So I already put these on here, you know, these are the same, look. For example, this here is one page, which you can also find as a full page in the printable. This is another one, and so on. Yeah, so I have put 4 pages here to the sheet. For example, I think here you can see it. This is one sheet. Here are 2 sheets on one sheet. Can you see? And this one here, for example, is this. And this here is this. So that means there's a special amount of, there's an amount of these labels, and they repeat, but they are different in size. Do you know what I mean? So that you then can print this out easily and find the right size for your project. That was really helpful in the past, and you have appreciated that, and you have given me the feedback that that is good for you. So I did this again with this printable. And while I was thinking about the colors for this journal, I mean, we have just talked about it. I said I want to have neutrals in here. I also realized that some of these other colors, like this blue and the turquoise and even the yellow, I mean, here's yellow as well, but look, this turquoise would fit so well. This blue would fit so well. I mean, yeah, I don't know what exactly is going to happen with this, but what I know is that I want to make some more of these things so that I then later on can use them and decorate this journal a little further and add some finishing touches. That will not happen in this video. In this video, I will only show you this glossy rust effect, but that will happen in my next video, where you can then follow how I do this here, and you can then see how I use these to make my finishing touches in the journal. Does that make sense? So what do we need for this effect? First, we obviously need something where we can do the effect. Yeah, so that can be a printable, that can be another normal piece of paper, that can be some rice packaging, that can be everything you want to know, you want to use. No, holy cow! That can be everything you want to use and have in your journal, and where you want to have this rusty effect on. So I'm just thinking, since I made a ton of these in, this, like, I would say typical rust color, with typical I mean orange and this patina-ish bluish turquoise thing, why don't we take, so that we can have a bigger variety in the end and that we can compare what we like better, why don't we take some of these which have another color palette? That would perhaps be an idea. So I will cut this in half, and I do that because when I have this here, it fits into my embossing tray like so. That will make sense in a second. If you don't have something like this, you don't need to pay attention to the size. But if you have such a tray, make sure that the paper fits in there, because then you can save some time. In the live stream with Barbara, when this effect happened for the first time, I had my things already cut out. And I did this effect on the single piece here, but I thought, why don't I try to save some time and do the effect on the whole sheet and then later on cut it out, because that seems to be really time saving. What do we then need? So we need, first of all, some embossing ink. So you can take an embossing dabber. Oh, I just see, this is my clocked embossing dabber. I need to use this one, but it's the same thing. Yeah, this is just the new label and this is the old label, but it's the same thing. It's such a thing where you have this little felt here, and then you can apply the embossing ink like so, just by dabbing to your paper. You can also use an embossing ink pad if you don't have the dabber, but I have tried that out, and for me this works easier and better, because when you take the ink pad, you have a way bigger surface here, and when you then press that to the paper like so, you get these edges from the shape of this felt. I don't like that so much. An alternative would be, if you don't have this, take the ink pad, put that to the table, and then press the paper in like so, dab with your finger to the paper, and apply the embossing ink. I have tried that out. For me, it works not so well. So it's not my favorite way to apply the embossing ink for this technique. But if you only have the ink pad, please just do it with the ink pad. Yeah, it is possible. But if you have the choice, I would say take this. Then next we need some embossing glaze / embossing powder. This is antique linen embossing glaze. Where is my little jar? Just wanted to show that into the camera so that you can, if you want, make a screenshot also, or that you can read it better. So this is antique linen distress glaze. You could use embossing powder for this as well. The main idea behind this effect would work with embossing powder as well, but embossing powder is opaque and embossing glaze is translucent, and that means when I use this on here and the effect is done, I can still see what is on my print, and of course I want that. If you perhaps have a plain label, let's say you have something like this, and you want to make this glossy rust effect on here, then you could also, of course, use embossing powder, like for example gold or black or white or whatever, which is not translucent, and apply then the rest of the mediums, and then you have this effect on a piece of something where it's not necessary that you can see through the medium. Yeah, but I of course want to see these numbers on here. So yeah, this is antique linen, but you can also of course vary the colors and you can use what you want. Then you can use additionally some alcohol ink. I have the color rust here, but the alcohol ink is optional. You can also skip the step with the alcohol ink, but I think if you have alcohol ink, try it out, because let me find a good example. Look here, for example, can you see this rusty color there, and these like, that looks like wet stuff on there, especially because it's glossy. That is the alcohol ink, which reacts really interesting with the embossing glaze when you heat that up. So if you have alcohol ink, take it out and, you know, try it out with the alcohol ink, because that is just, yeah, I would say another level of this technique, but it works without alcohol ink as well. And what we then also need is some acrylic paint. I have the distress paint here. I've chosen speckled egg and weathered wood. I will mix those later, because this is a little bit too grayish for me and this is a little bit too bluish for me for this effect, so I want to mix them later. If you have like thicker how is that called, acrylic paint, then you can use that as well, but please mix that with some water. I found out that the distress paint, because it's so liquid and it doesn't have these like fillers in it, yeah, it's a special kind of acrylic paint that works really, really well, because we want to make the acrylic paint bubble later with our heat tool. I will explain everything in detail when we come to that point. But if you want to gather the supplies now, I want you to search for something which works really well. So if you don't have the distress paint, then use normal thicker acrylic paint, mix that with a lot of water so that you get a really liquid mixture of the paint and water, because then the effect works the best. If you would use normal thick acrylic paint just from the tube, that wouldn't work, because it would dry way too fast to make this effect work. Yeah, that's basically it. You can, if you want, additionally take out an archival ink pad or something similar like StazOn or anything else which would work on surfaces like plastic or, you know, embossing glaze. What is that? That is basically somehow plastic, a slippery stuff. So you would need a permanent ink, but that is also additional. I will show you in the end what I do with this. So let's go into this. The first thing is we're going to take this and throw that to the other end of the table so that we have some space here. Then we are going to take our embossing ink, and now I will apply this really randomly to the paper here. Of course I have a whole sheet here, but I want to make sure that the embossing ink is only on parts of these labels. Could you do that on the whole surface? Yes, obviously, but I want to have this really authentically rusted, and yeah, I think rust is not everywhere. Yeah, on the print here you can see these rusty areas, and the patina is also not everywhere, and I think that looks more authentic. That's why I do it also only in some areas on these labels here. If you want to see where the embossing ink is, you can hold it against the light, and then you can see that pretty well. Ooh, what are you doing here? Go away. So I will quickly do that for the other sheet here as well. And then when I have that, I take this thing and my little tray here with the embossing glaze on it, and here it comes in really handy that the paper fits in here, because then I can do it like so and just let the embossing glaze slide over here, and I can cover everything where the ink is with the embossing glaze in one step. What we are going to do now is we're going to take our heat tool, and I will melt the glaze now, and then I will use the stickiness of this thing while it's still hot to add more layers of the embossing glaze. I think I will do like 2 or 3 layers. This sheet is pretty big, so the easiest way for me to do this is to melt 1/2 approximately, and then add the second layer already here on this half, even if the other half is not embossed yet, because otherwise it melts it dries and gets cold too fast for my ability to handle this. So this is still hot now, and with that it's sticky. So I take this, even if this is not embossed yet, and I add my second layer here. And with that, it also gets automatically really irregular. And I'm totally in love with that, because, yeah, you know, we love irregular things in our junk journals. And antique linen, for me, is the perfect color of embossing glaze for this, because you can see there is something, but it doesn't change the color of the print so much. Or, well, it changes the color of the print, but this antique linen color fits well to nearly everything. So that's probably why it works so well for this effect. So I will go on and add multiple layers of the glaze here until I think that looks good. You can, of course, do that with 1 layer as well. You could just stop after adding the first layer of the glaze. But I made the experience that when you have 2 or 3 layers, and you can try to compare that. Look here. Here it's really, I think I can't say saturated, because that is probably not the right word, but you can feel that there is a lot of the glaze compared to here, where until now only approximately 1 layer is, and that is not so much. When you see these little can you see these little irregular areas there where you can see the paper through the glaze? That's where no glaze landed and where no glaze got stick to the thing. And with only one layer, this effect is really hard to handle. So I would recommend to add multiple layers, 2 or 3 layers of the glaze, so that you have a really nearly solid area of the glaze, and that it is really glossy and that you can feel, okay, here is glaze. Yeah, you can feel it, you can see it, it's really there. Then it's easier to handle. So I will quickly do that here on the other side of the paper and also for the other sheet. So when that is finished, it looks like this. And now you can, if you want, add some alcohol ink, but that step is, as I said, optional. Would work without the alcohol ink as well. This is the color Rust. And now I want to put some drops of this to the embossing glaze. I make sure that the alcohol ink only gets there where the embossing glaze is, because if it would soak into my paper, that would look not so nice. But of course you can play around with that. And as you can see, I have some puddles here now. And to avoid that the alcohol ink gets sticky, because you know, when you have too much alcohol ink in one spot, it can happen that it gets sticky when you let it dry or when you heat it up. I take this little sponge and I just bring the alcohol ink around the tiniest little bit. That doesn't have to be much. I don't want to have it everywhere. And I want to make sure that I still have these like little shapes of the alcohol ink, that it's not blended into the rest, but that I have these little, like rusty shapes. Do you know what I mean? So here you can see it probably pretty well. Can you see there's still this harsh line, and it makes this little shape, and it's not blended into the background or so. I will quickly do that here as well. Okie dokie. So then we need our acrylic paint, and I want to make a mixture from speckled egg and weathered wood. I think that fits pretty well to the colors in my journal, but please use what you like and what you have and what fits your needs. So I will put a little bit of this here. Then I take my splatter brush and a little bit of water, because the distress paint is already pretty liquid. If you want to use normal acrylic paint, please add way more water so that it gets really, really liquid. And then you just splatter to this piece. Here, I want to have a ton of these splatters on here. This looks a lot, but please believe me, in the end, when everything is cut out, it's just the right amount of this rusty effect. But of course you could do way less than I do here. Yeah, of course, that is also possible. But I like it when it's really extreme. And I made the experience, if you have 2 sheets and you want to do everything at once, then you can go like in the steps with all of the sheets until here, until the splattering comes. And now when you have splattered to one sheet, then please do the next step first before you splatter to your 2nd, 3rd, 4th sheet. Yeah, because we want to make sure that this can't dry before we heat it up again. And that is what I want to do next. And I made the experience when I splattered 2 sheets at the same time, the acrylic paint dries on the glaze and then the effect doesn't work anymore. So we want to make sure that we reheat this and remelt the embossing glaze when the acrylic paint is still wet. Because now I will hold my heat tool over here, and I will wait until the acrylic paint starts to bubble. So I want to, yeah, I don't know if it's then cooking the acrylic paint, but somehow it is. Can you see? There it starts to bubble. And that also makes that the acrylic paint gets one with the glaze now. So what's happening here is that the glaze is, yeah, getting remelted. The alcohol ink is with that spreading somehow, so the alcohol ink gets mixed with the glaze obviously as well, and with that it gets this cool rusty effect, and this patina texture comes because the acrylic paint, oh, it's so hard for me to explain in English, I'm so sorry, because the acrylic paint is bubbling because it's getting hot, and because the embossing glaze gets melted, both of those mediums, the acrylic paint and the embossing glaze, get one. And with that, we get this cool effect. But as I said a second ago, for this, so that this can work, it's necessary that the acrylic paint is still wet and that it is able to bubble. And that is also the reason why I said if you use like thicker acrylic paint, please make sure that you add enough water, because without these bubbles, the effect will not be successful. The cool thing is when that is then cool again, this whole thing is finished, because then the acrylic paint is dry at the same time as the glaze gets cold, and that is really cool because then you can cut it out and use it directly and you don't have to wait for the splatters to dry. And with that, you also get this really cool crusty patina, which is embedded in this glossy, yeah, this glossy look of the glaze. And that is really cool. And when it's cold, it's really, that feels so crazy because it's such a cool mixture of this slippery, glossy feeling under your fingers and this rough, this feels nearly like sandpaper or so in those areas where the paint is. Then you have something like this. Ah, that is good. And I think antique linen fits really well to nearly all of the colors we could imagine. I mean, this printable is pretty colorful and I like it on each of the colors, and that is good because then we can do a whole sheet in one go and then cut everything out. Yeah, okay. So then we still have a little bit of paint left here. I will add a little bit more water because due to my heat tool, this might have become a little bit too dry. So then we are going to splatter on here as well. And I will quickly do the same thing, remelt the glaze and embed the acrylic paint into the glaze. And then you can additionally also use a permanent ink if you want, but you could also say this is finished and, you know, I will cut them out and then I'm ready to go and use them in my projects. But you could also mute this down a little bit on the one hand with a permanent ink, or or how can I say that? Make this into a more, yeah, give it a little bit more depth with this. Take the ink pad and please listen carefully now. This is really rough, isn't it? So please don't add pressure to your ink pad when you go over this. Take it and just without any pressure, yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm doing basically nichts anderes. Ja, genau. Das ist Deutsch, Luise. Kannst du bitte Englisch sprechen, sonst versteht keiner was. Sorry, that was German. I'm doing nothing else than, you know, something like this. It slides over the paper with its own weight. I don't add pressure because of this texture, I have the danger that I could ruin my ink pad, because this is like, it feels like sandpaper. And obviously, I don't want to ruin my ink pad. And the other thing is, so be careful with that, please. And the other thing is, if I would press too hard, it could happen that my glaze gets stained too much from the ink pad, and I don't want that. I only want this ink on the raised areas of the texture. I don't know if you can see that here so well. Turned out not so extremely like I expected, but perhaps you can see the difference. It's like an outline around these raised little crusty areas there. Perhaps I can find a better example in here, because I have done that. I think it's this one. So here I definitely don't have the archival ink on it. And on this one, I added the archival ink. Can you see that? Ooh, the difference. And both of this is made with the same colors of paint. But on the right, you can see these little like craters have an outline, which they don't have on the left piece. And that is the difference. And this here looks then, yeah, obviously a little more deeper texture-wise, not so flat, even if you can feel it here, of course, but it gives more dimension when you add the archival ink. But please make sure that you use a permanent ink, like archival ink, StazOn or something like that, because like, you know, distress ink or oxide ink would not dry on the glaze, yeah, because it's not made for that. So then I'm going to take my scissors and I cut all of these out. Ta-da! Oh, I'm so happy. This is so cool. I mean, once you have cut them apart, you can see and of course appreciate this cool effect on here. I think when you have the whole sheet in front of you, you can't really see that so well. I think all of these details come more to your attention once you have cut them out and look at these separately. And of course, this is a really great stash now, because, you know, throw them into your snippet drawer or wherever you store these things, and then you have a ton in your stash for future projects. I mean, I will probably not use all of these in the same journal, otherwise, you know, there would be the problem with the space in the journal, but isn't this just cool? Ah, I'm so in love. Yeah, and now, of course, you can say, I want to ink the edges of these to give them a little more shape or so. I think that is a good idea. But please make sure that you use a permanent ink for doing this step as well, because here where the embossing glaze is on the edge of this, a water-soluble ink would not dry. So for example, distress ink or oxide ink would not dry on the glazed area. So that's why I use my archival ink pad here again to do that step. In one of my next videos, I think it's I think it's already the next video which will come to my channel, you can see how I include these in my journal. So that is a video about how to add finishing touches to a journal. But to see if this works, you can of course just take these pieces and put them somewhere here just by holding them on the page, and then you can decide which of these you want to use in the journal and which will perhaps go into another journal. So yeah, that's it for today, and I'm really hoping that you like this idea, and perhaps you want to make your own stash of little pieces with this glossy rust effect. Bye bye!